His fans call him the biggest threat to Christianity, and he calls himself,
guess what, guys? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders.
But Billy Carson recently faced a challenge like never before, a debate with Wes Huff, a Christian scholar and historian, and afterwards, Billy reportedly showed up to the producer's house at 2:30 a.m. demanding that the footage not be released. And if you haven't heard about this debate yet, there is a reason for that.
In the wake of the interview, Billy Carson has asked that the recording not be released. In my personal opinion, the conversation did not go well for Billy, though.
Hey YouTube world, Harvest is Plenty. Welcome back. We're going to go into part 2. And yes, it is true that Billy did show up at that man's house between 2 and 3 o'clock a.m. in the morning to try to convince him to not post that debate with Wes Huff. The Ring doorbell footage was actually posted online. I got a chance to see some of it, but Billy has been working non-stop to get the videos removed, you know, hitting everybody with copyright strikes. He got his legal team on it. And I hope my channel the video stays up and I don't get suspended for posting it. But I mean, Billy was annihilated. You know, Billy has been making a lot of money. That's his bread and butter, to go into these podcasts, because people pay you to come on their podcast because they know they're going to get a lot of views and they're going to monetize those views. So Billy goes on and he makes his bread and butter off of the Sinai Bible, off of saying that Jesus' wife book is real, off of saying that the Enuma Elish, that the book of Genesis, the creation story in the book of Genesis was copied word for word from the Enuma Elish.
I give you one big translation that's off is they say, well, Jesus was crucified.
Whoa.
Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible.
What happened?
It doesn't exist in the book of Barnabas.
Fair enough. I can respect that. So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit. Predominantly, from my research, I discovered that a lot of information from the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation is a lot of in Genesis, a lot of the creation story that comes into Genesis. Not all of it, but because obviously Genesis is a much smaller version of a much bigger story. But it's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
So then when Wes says, well, okay, what's the parallels? What's word for word? Billy says, the waters was divided from the waters. The waters was divided from the waters. Oh man, I can't stop laughing at that. The waters was divided from the waters. That's all he came up with. And then Wes said, well, you know, the waters was divided from the waters and the void. And then Billy said, yeah, the void too. You know, he picks up what Wes, put down. He's the world's foremost expert on ancient texts, tablets, cylinder scrolls, manuscripts, all of that stuff. You heard him say that in the introduction. Yet when Wes takes him to task, he has no proof. Just trust me, bro. Just trust me. It's good. I've been to Egypt. I travel all over the world. Just trust me, bro. Well, Wes travels too. Wes goes to Egypt too. Wes has P66, P1. He has the Codex Sinaiticus on the shelf. He has all of that. Billy has nothing. Just trust me, bro, that Jesus wasn't crucified because it's in the Sinai Bible. That the book of Genesis was copied word from word from the Enuma Elish. That Jesus had a wife because the book is in the Harvard Library. Just all of this, just Da Vinci Code, mumbo jumbo, we could be gods from the Christ consciousness stuff. Just trust me, bro. I don't have any proof, but just trust me, bro. He got his card pulled. This is career ending. And that's why he was at that guy's house at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, ringing on that guy's doorbell, a Ring doorbell, to make sure that this video never sees the light of day. All right, let's roll into part 2 and pick up from where we left off at.
And then, that's the way I look at things. So anyway, go ahead. I had to just throw in.
Yeah. I mean, there's a really great resource written by a friend of mine, John Dixon. It's a book called Bullies and Saints, where he goes through a lot of the instances of where obviously you're going to find abuses, and every human being is going to find a way to exploit whatever is presented to them. So in one sense, I think we can say, isn't it convenient that God used the masculine the masculine pronoun. I keep saying plural, it's just a mistake. The masculine pronoun. And we can say, oh, sure, that's convenient, maybe, but it is how he has he has revealed himself to us, and it's not his fault if we abuse that. I mean, we could say, so I grew up in the Middle East. My parents worked in Amman, Jordan. And when I was living in the Middle East, there was a country called the Democratic Republic of Iraq. Now, just because democracy exists and people are going to name things democratic when they obviously aren't, doesn't mean we then judge democracy. I mean, think of the Democratic Republic of North Korea, right? Nobody thinks that that's an actual representation of democracy. So people are always going to abuse terms and ideas and concepts. The difference is, though, I think historically within Judeo-Christianity, you have this ethic that we were talking about before that I think is fundamentally different than what we find in things like the Enuma Elish, the Atrasis, and other things, in that we are created in the image of God. And actually, one of the earliest criticisms of Christianity are by individuals like Celsus, who is a Greco-Roman philosopher in the 2nd century, where he accused Christianity of being foolish, dishonorable, and stupid, and he called it the religion of slaves, women, and children. Why? Not because God used the masculine pronoun for himself and people were abusing that, because the concept that Christians believed in of everybody, no matter what your gender, your race, your social standing, Paul says in Christ there is no slave nor free, there is no Jew nor Gentile, there is no Scythian or barbarian, there's no male nor female. These things united people. And we can see there's a historian named Rodney Stark. And in his book, The Rise of Christianity, he actually says that you can track empirically the agency of women across the ancient world by the movement of Christianity. So that, in other words, whenever an area became populated by Christians, we see a direct correlation with the privileges and treatments of women that expand in time when the surrounding culture largely didn't view women as being fully human. So I think we're always going to have abuses, but if there's one worldview that exists that gives agency to people and says that everybody has worth by nature of being just human, it's the Christian worldview. And that's where I think it's very different. So we can argue about why we think God should or shouldn't have revealed himself in his pronouns, but I think that's actually irrespective of the historical reality that we see within the impact of Christianity, particularly on the West, but around the world, and how it gives agency to the marginalized.
Wes, can I ask you one? So when because I'm always interested in this, like you were raised Christian. I always think about this, like my wife who's Muslim, and our beliefs at the core are so similar, but there's some differences. And I wonder, like, if I was born in Sierra Leone, West Africa, where she was, I know in the Bible says Christ revealed, but C.S. Lewis is someone that I really respect, because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a think outside the box always, and we should be. No one should just be like sheep and follow what any of us are saying. Like, do your research on your own with everything, of course. But what led you, sorry, going back to C.S. Lewis real quick, he was a famous scholar who was once an atheist, set out on a journey to basically disprove the Bible. As he went to do that, he himself found out that to be like one of the most historically accurate written books, which really shocked him. He then became a Christian after that. He's done the Narnia movies, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or their books. They weren't movies when he passed away. But he has an amazing... I love people like him because he doesn't just act like... He always was questioning everything. He's like, why is there this going? Why are these little kids dying, God, when they're... But something that he continued to come up with, which reminded me so much of Jesus and the love conquers all things too, is when so many people overly get caught up on religion over the relationship. And he's like, I've actually met some atheists that are closer to God without even knowing it. And I've met some Christians that are further away from God without even knowing it. And I believe that too so much. And I'm just really curious, like, as you went on your journey as being like a historian, studying biblical text, and then being raised, of the church, did you take it? I don't want to put what, because did you take it upon like whatever I continue to discover? I'm going to have to accept, like, say something you did find when you were in Egypt revealed differently than what you were taught. Like, did you kind of tell yourself, I'm going on a quest, like searching for truth without like a set conclusion to prove Christianity, knowing that it could go either way? Am I making sense?
Billy is getting dismantled, annihilated, and I see why he doesn't want this debate or interview to see the light of day. I mean, to be honest, from my opinion, Wes is taking it very easy on Billy. Wes is very polite, kind, and respectful of Billy, so he didn't mash on him very harshly in a way that he could have. Another thing, when it comes to Christians, a lot of people think Christians are just dumb, that we don't do any research, that we just trust and follow the Bible blindly, that we don't look at other sources outside of Scripture to see if it's true, that we don't put the Bible to the test for ourselves. Because me personally, I was told that the Bible was fake, when I was in college, and that the Bible wasn't real, and that I should look other place. So I started my research and my journey at that point to prove whether or not Christianity was true, to prove whether or not the Bible was reliable. And the more I read, the more I studied, the more it pointed to Jesus Christ, Christianity, and the Bible. Let's listen to how Wes answers Matt when Matt asks him, have you looked into other things, into other places and done research, and how did that get you to the point where you believe that Christianity is true and that the Bible is, reliable and that Jesus Christ is God? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
Like, say something you did find when you were in Egypt revealed differently than what you were taught. Like, did you kind of tell yourself, I'm going on a quest, like searching for truth without like a set conclusion to prove Christianity, knowing that it could go either way? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a bit of an unusual household in that my mom grew up in India, and my parents, when I was younger, I was born in Pakistan, and I spent a portion of my childhood in Jordan. I grew up in majority Muslim countries and surrounded by majority Muslim environments.
Hmm.
And we had, a copy of the Quran in the room. In fact, we had the Bhagavad Gita and the Book of Mormon, and for a little while, other documents in our house. These were things that my parents, although they never verbally said, these Christianity is true, therefore these are not forbidden. These are not verboten. The truth, capital T truth, of the reality of the world we behold can stand up against scrutiny and investigation. And I did do a great deal of that as a kid. My dad is a historian as well. He has a doctorate, and I grew up on him, reading the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. But at the exact same time, the reason why I actually went to university with full intention of going into the police force,
Oh, wow.
but it was interactions with Muslims and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and atheists and accusations against the credibility of the Bible, which actually piqued my interest because they would say things that I thought, if that's true, of course that undermines what I believe. I believe that Jesus is God incarnate. If I can't trust the Gospels as reliable first century eyewitness testimony, then I might as well throw all of this away because I'm not going to believe a lie, even if it's a convenient lie. And so it was actually the exploration of eventually going into graduate college and then now in working on my PhD, the largest secular university in Canada, that got me thinking, okay, how do we investigate these things? What are the methodologies by which we go about to explore the origins and credibility of something like the Bible? And that investigation, with all due respect to Billy and the content that you put out, has actually confirmed what I believe. I'm dealing with the actual manuscripts. I travel to academic institutions, to other countries, and I look at these things and I read them. And it's a privilege to be able to learn languages like Greek and Coptic and Hebrew and Aramaic and dig into these things. And I think ultimately, I really appreciate what you said there, Mark, with your articulation of your personal relationship. And I think that's so important. But I think it's also important to remember that that relationship is based on something that's real and verifiable. And we can look into the evidence. I have friends who are linguists, philologists, and historians. And when we look into these things and we talk with one another, and we're constantly trying to falsify our theories, because that's what good history does. We're looking for the falsification. You don't go in, ideally, if you want to be a good historian, with
Right.
trying to prove your original thesis. You go in and say, okay, what are the avenues that actually could disprove this? And then how do we engage with those in an appropriate and articulate manner? So um, uh, what I believe is true, but I believe it based on the evidence of the actual documentation. I've read a lot of the literature that you're talking about, Billy, the Numa Elish, the Atrahasis, the Bhagavad Gita, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I've read some of them in their original languages because I've tried to be a good historian and go back into the primary sources. Or if I can't, engage with people like my friends who are Assyriologists, who are philologists, and try to not just go off of a translation, but the original. And I think I've found largely the opposite of the conclusions that you have made, Billy. And I know that you are very passionate about what you talk about, and I respect that. I just think that the confidence might not actually be backed up by the reality of the evidence.
Did you guys hear that? Wes calmly says as he smiles and says, Billy, I understand that you're passionate, you have some zeal for what you believe in, and I respect that. But your passion and your confidence is not backed up by any evidence. Stick a fork in him. It's over. It's done. Ringman throwing the towel. It is done. Wes said, not only have I traveled to the places that you have traveled, I've also read the books that you have read. Probably even more. And I come to the opposite conclusion of what you've came to. And I have the evidence to back it. And I know that you're passionate about what you believe in, but you don't have the evidence to back that. He said it so succinctly, so nicely, so polite, so respectfully of Billy. Stick a fork in Billy. It is over. It is over. His fan club, guys, to Billy's fan club. If you're watching, your mentor, the guy that you said is filled with knowledge and wisdom, he's being exposed and dismantled in real time. It's over for Billy. No more Sinai Bible, Jesus' Wife Gospel, Enuma Elish, Emerald Tablet stuff. It's over.
I think I've found largely the opposite of the conclusions that you have made, Billy. And I know that you are very passionate about what you talk about, and I respect that. I just think that the confidence might not actually be backed up by the reality of the evidence. So when we're looking at something like the Sinai Bible, when we're looking at something like the Gospel of Barnabas, when we're looking at something like the Gospel of Jesus' wife, these are things that actually have provenance that we can verify. And ultimately, I think the answers to the questions of the legitimacy or the illegitimacy of those things point to not just a different conclusion, but actually the opposite conclusion, and that Christianity is true.
Well, now I'm glad you said that. So those three topics are a very small piece of my concept and idea.
I'm sorry. Billy goes, I'm glad you said that. This is so enjoyable.
Of what really happened in the ancient past. So that's a very small fraction. That's less than 0.1%. You talk about eyewitness accounts to convince you that Christianity is real. There's been eyewitness accounts of every culture that I've visited around this entire planet, and their eyewitness accounts of what they experienced is 100,000% opposite of what's in the Bible. People have.
What do you mean? Can you give me an example?
The Dogon tribe, for example, in Mali, Africa, they experienced a culture that they claim came to this planet from Sirius B. They have the evidence that they knew these beings were from Sirius B because they have the instruments that show the orbit of a trinary star system that we couldn't discover until the 1970s with our modern technology, okay? They understood not only the orbital pattern of Sirius A, B, and C, but even that B was a failed star, which you can't see it from Earth with the naked eye. They knew that it was a white dwarf. They even knew that they said that if you took a tablespoon of it the entire tribe or 1,000 men couldn't lift a tablespoon. They understood mass and gravity as well. They were told the shape, the sizes, and the colors of all the planets in our solar system, which they recorded. And there's only one wisdom keeper, and that person can never be touched by a person. If they get touched by another person, they'd actually be killed. And then they eventually have a mentee that they break down that verbally handed down knowledge to. And that next person then takes over and becomes the wisdom keeper. And they've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. And science, modern science, has found all their information to be 1,000% accurate. Then you have the Hopi tribe of the Americas, indigenous tribes, Hopi tribe, Lakota tribe, also having engagements with these quote unquote star brothers, even having an account of them being taken underground, which you don't see just only in America. I just came back from Turkey. You have the people from Turkey and Mesopotamia also being taken underground into a place called Derinkuyu by these beings, by these people, a structure that's built 12 stories deep underground, that's made out of volcanic tuff, a very soft stone. And if you don't know what you're doing, it'll actually collapse. There's no evidence of any collapse. And it was thousands of years old. It was reused many times. So the mainstream story about what it was used for to hide from Romans is actually false. This place is ancient. And in order to build it, you actually have to have foreknowledge of how to construct this type of an underground civilization that can hold 20 to 30,000 people, places for livestock, places for worship, with no sign of collapse. Then you have to have hundreds of ventilation shafts. And I've been down there. Those ventilation shafts cut through solid rock all the way down to the core. And there's even more. It links to other underground cities that are miles and miles away. As you get to the very base of this area, you can cut through and go to another location. But again, these people were taken under. Also, then you have the ancient Egyptians. Similar story. Major catastrophe comes. These people come and take them underground. Then you have the information in the Egyptian book of Going Forth by Day. More accounts by people, our ancestors, that have accounts that do not match up with the biblical text. And so all of a sudden we're saying that all these cultures, the Aboriginal people, I can go into them as well. I've gone for walkabouts in Outback, in the Outback, and the Aboriginal elders, same thing. They were seated here by Pleiadians. This is their verbal handed down history for thousands of years. And I can go around the world and I can come up with all this information from all these eyewitness accounts from people that should be respected, dignified, and shouldn't be scoffed. And that we're now saying that all this information that they put forward, all their verbal handed down history, all their written history, that's got to go to the side, because this one text is 1,000% accurate.
Sure, but so my question is, most of that is oral history, correct?
Oh, it's all oral history, even the Bible.
Okay, so when we're engaging with oral history, what methodologies are you using to confirm that the orality is accurate?
So Billy goes on a tangent about ancient astronaut theory, the Pleiades, sky beings. These people took them underground. He's talking about the fallen angels, guys. You know, I did a video called "Exposing the Anunnaki and the Alien Agenda," something to that effect, with Zachariah Stitchin. Rest in peace, Dr. Heiser. He exposed Zachariah Stitchin and his ancient astronaut theory, because they don't have any command of the ancient Sumerian language. It's all a lie, you know, and they use this stuff to try to knock the Bible, but the Bible is still undefeated. But then Wes asks Billy, oral history, what methodologies do you use to verify its orality? And Billy just he started laughing because he don't use any methodology. It's just that more of that, trust me, bro. I know what I'm talking about. Just trust me, bro. Let's pick up.
Sure, but so my question is, most of that is oral history, correct?
Oh, it's all oral history, even the Bible.
Okay, so when we're engaging with oral history, what methodologies are you using to confirm that the orality is accurate?
Oh man. Well, first and foremost, some of these texts some of these cultures have written down information in caves. You've got cave paintings. The Dogon tribe actually have not only written down
Sure.
in
No,
caves,
I don't disagree with that. The question is one of historic. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. The question is one of methodological analysis. So you have to have a method by which you can find either that something is falsifiable or that there are avenues by which you can show internal and external accuracy of credibility. So this is what we do with documents. This is what we do with the ancient gospels. This is what I do. I've worked on Xenophon and Plutarch, and we look at the internal evidences and the external multivalent corroboration to try to figure out, okay, yes, we have all these stories. Great. I don't deny that. But as a historian, as someone who's trying to figure out what is accurate, how do you know if I use the term verisimilitude, do you know what that term means?
No, but I can tell you this. Tell me how the Dogon tribe saw Sirius B, knew the orbit of Sirius B, a trinary star system, accurately, and can show you the orbit with a special tool that they made that was given to them by these people. How do they know the shapes, the sizes, the colors, and the orbital pattern of all these planets in our solar system and other star alignments that they would use to have something called the Ziggy and planet and their own harvesting and planting and so forth and so on? That's not enough
So
evidence that there's something
well,
going
I'm not I'm not aware of that particular case. And even I mean, I would grant that the ancient people are far more technological advanced than we give themselves credit for. Just because they're ancient doesn't mean they're stupid. I am well aware, as someone who has done both investigation in the past and done archaeological analysis, that is a reality. My question is simply, okay, you have these stories or you have these accounts, you're referring to them as eyewitness testimony. How are you going about verifying that as that?
Well, if the people had eyewitness testimony about Jesus, they then just wrote down their eyewitness testimony on a piece of paper or parchment paper or papyrus. So these
Right.
people,
So that's where
some of
internal
it's oral, some
methodological
of it's oral, and some
analysis.
of it's actually written down. So I mean, it's the same exact thing. There's really no difference.
Well, no. So you do internal investigations to figure out when something was dated. So something like so when I use that term verisimilitude before, that's something we as historians are looking for. It's a term that simply means the appearance or likelihood of truthfulness. So when you do historical analysis, it's an inference to the best explanation. So you have proof and you have data, and you're extrapolating that data on levels of probability. So some things can be confirmed as high probabilistically true, and other things are lower in their probability that they happened. But there are different methodologies, different ways that you explore historically how that happens.
Well,
So for the Gospels, you look
that
at
was with the Dogon tribe. Scientists went there to visit the tribe, and they still have no answers because they used their modern science. They took the best scholars to visit these people, and they're still scratching their heads. Something happened there
sure.
that
And
doesn't.
and I'm not even denying that necessarily, but the question is, okay, we need different levels of evidence and exploration, not just scientifically, but historically to derive something as eyewitness testimony. Now we have mountains of that, and I'm more than willing to go into some of that with the Gospels as early eyewitness testimony that can be verified externally and internally. But nonetheless, the only reason I ask, Billy, is because I've listened to a fair amount of your content, and I'm unaware of the methods that you use to try to discern between what is an accurate source historiographically and an inaccurate source historiographically.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I use getting in an airplane and traveling to these places, doing my own research, talking with the indigenous cultures, and researching as much of the text that is available that I can possibly find.
Okay.
I'm
So
not going.
I don't dispute that. And I do believe you have done that. But I mean, even from what we've talked about, so you've researched the text, but when we talked about the crucifixion, everything you cited was either, and I mean with all due respect, false in terms of the Sinai Bible, because Codex Sinaiticus is just a 4th century Greek manuscript of the Gospels that we have today, or they were verified forgeries in terms of
Yeah,
the
but
Gospel of Jesus' wife
you
and the
might be
Gospel of
right.
Barnabas.
You may be right on that particular part of the topic, but like I said, that's less than 1/10% of the information that I hold.
Sure, but
This is hilarious. You guys just don't understand. Wes asked Billy, how do you verify the stuff that you teach? What's your methodology to verify eyewitness testimony? And he goes on about the Dogon tribe and about cave paintings and the people, the sky people took him underground, and he jumps in an airplane and he go talk to the indigenous people and all of that stuff. Wes says, okay, cool. I don't deny that you've done any of that, but what's your methodology to verify the truth of that? Billy doesn't have a methodology. Just trust me, bro. I jumped on the plane and I went there. Now buy my book on the Emerald Tablet. Wes then says very respectfully, Billy, everything that you've presented so far is fraudulent. The talk about the book of Jesus' wife, the Gospel of Barnabas, the Sinai Bible, all of this stuff is inaccurate and it's fraudulent. You haven't presented anything yet so far that's truthful. Billy responds with, well, you might be right about all of that, but that's only a tenth of what I know. Wow. Stick a fork in him. It's over. It's been over, but stick another fork in him.
We have mountains of that, and I'm more than willing to go into some of that with the Gospels as early eyewitness testimony that can be verified externally and internally. But nonetheless, the only reason I ask, Billy, is because I've listened to a fair amount of your content, and I'm unaware of the methods that you use to try to discern between what is an accurate source historiographically and an inaccurate source historiographically.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I use getting in an airplane and traveling to these places, doing my own research, talking with the indigenous cultures, and researching as much of the text that is available that I can possibly find.
Okay. So I don't dispute that. And I do believe you have done that. But I mean, even from what we've talked about, so you've researched the text, but when we talked about the crucifixion, everything you cited was either, and I mean with all due respect, false in terms of the Sinai Bible, because Codex Sinaiticus is just a 4th century Greek manuscript of the Gospels that we have today, or they were verified forgeries in terms of the Gospel of Jesus' wife.
You might be right. You may be right on that particular part of the topic, but like I said, that's less than 0.1% of the information that I hold.
Sure, but that was the original question. So yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, well, so I'm going off of what we've already talked about. So you said you explore the text. I don't deny that. But the evidence, by going off of what you have put forward in terms of the actual documentary evidence, is not just less than convincing in my respect. And I mean this with respect, because I think you have done a lot of research. You've traveled to these places. I have too. Like, this is what I do as my career. But I'm not really getting indication, because in history, we go to the primary sources in their primary languages. And when Mark asked, okay, why do you deny the crucifixion? The sources you used were not primary.
Okay, we're still talking about the same thing over and over again. There's so much more we can talk about here. We're wasting a lot of time. There's so much more. That's this amount.
Do you guys
so much more stuff to talk about?
Do you think that all these different cultures and stuff describing these other beings, could those have been, I'm not an expert theologian or whatever, but like where it talks about war, I always want to personally ask you this too, where in the Bible it talks about like wars between the demons and the angels. There's a lot of crazy stuff in the Bible too that you can prove it's been written, but it also takes some faith, because you can't physically see where there was wars between demons and angels and stuff fighting in the heavens. So there's tons going on, obviously. Could any of those have been, like, from what you've discovered or how people have written it, do you think those could have been demons or angels?
I don't believe in demons or angels at all.
You don't believe in them at all?
Nah, I don't believe in demons and angels. When you read Azazel coming down in the book of Enoch, coming down, and the first thing he does is teach people how to make knives and swords so they can cut a man's head off. You read, you see these quote unquote.
Where's that in the book of Enoch?
In the book of Enoch, Azazel. He comes down and he teaches.
Where is that in the book of Enoch? Is it? The only reason I ask is because there are two Enochs, first Enoch and second Enoch, and only first Enoch is an actual historical amalgamation.
Okay. And then you analyze the fact that these angels are having sex, they're getting drunk. These are just people.
Whoa. Where are angels getting drunk?
Angels party, they go, they hang out with people, They go to war with people. They put on their outfits and go to war with people. This is in the
Where are they
Bible.
getting drunk though?
They get married, okay, whatever that means. But they're having
They
a
don't
good
get
time.
married.
Okay, not
In fact,
married,
Scripture says that angels
Mary,
can't get
like
married.
Merry Christmas.
not married. Mary, Merry.
So Billy goes on this tirade about angels and demons and how you don't believe in them, and the Book of Enoch and Azazel and them. They get drunk. They show people how to make weapons to cut, and Azazel cut the people's heads off. Now, I have the Book of Enoch, and I'm pretty sure most of you have probably read it already. That's not in there where Azazel cuts the people's heads off, and that the angels get drunk and the angels get married. Wes corrects Billy on that, and Billy says, well, I don't mean married, I mean Mary, M-E-R-R-Y. Again, Billy is wrong on so many points. He loses horribly. How it ends is that Billy goes on an emotional tirade about mental illness, about slavery in the Bible, and say that, you know, the same tired argument that the Bible was forced on slaves in the South, and that the people in the Middle East shouldn't be considered the chosen people, yada, 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 yada. And then he rips off his headphones and walks off. He doesn't even give Wes a time to even respond, you know, appropriately to his comments. You know, he's upset, and you can see why he shows up at somebody's house at between 2 and 3 in the morning, ringing their doorbell to try to prevent this from coming out. What I would say is pray for Billy. I mean, he has to renounce all the stuff that he said, repent for it, and he has to also leave Freemasonry, you know, demit from the lodge, and come back home to Christ. Now, will he be willing to do that? I don't know. I mean, his whole reputation for years, he's been going around being portraying himself as the foremost expert on ancient texts and papyrus and, you know, all of this stuff, the Sinai Bible and hieroglyphs in Egypt and the Emerald Tablet and all of this stuff, and he's made a lot of money off of that stuff. So to now switch and say, hey, I was wrong, and that, you know, the Gospel of Barnabas is a fraud, that the Gospel of Jesus' wife or the Book of Jesus' wife is a fraud, you know, and all the stuff I said about the crucifixion is fake. I have no proof of that. You know, for him to turn around and backpedal from that, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, God changes people's hearts. When you debate somebody, or when we have these intense conversations, because I've had them, you know, tons of times with people who disagree with me, a lot of people, they dig their heels into the ground and they refuse to change their positions. And when you debate somebody, you know, you don't really change their heart. Only God can change hearts. And so hopefully God doesn't harden Billy's heart like he hardens Pharaoh's heart, and that he, you know, softens Billy's heart and allow him to see the error of his ways and to come to the truth in Jesus Christ. So please pray for Billy, but this is career ending for him. He cannot go on the circuit again with all of these lies. But then again, when he put out videos, and these videos garner millions of views, and I go through some of the comments, you know, he has thousands and thousands of comments, you know, when he does these podcasts, and these people agree with him. Maybe there is an audience for those who believe in falsehood and lies, because a lot of people want to believe that the Bible is wrong and that Jesus really didn't die and was crucified and raised on the third day, and that Christianity is wrong, that there are multiple ways to heaven, and that we all could become gods and obtain this Christ consciousness, and that the Luciferian philosophy is the truth, and Lucifer really is the light bearer. A lot of people want to believe in that stuff, and it's so unfortunate. But that's all I have for you today, guys. Continue to pray without ceasing. Pray for Billy. Pray for everybody that's lost. Pray for yourself. Pray for me. We all have fallen short. We all are sinners that needs forgiveness. I love you guys. Until my next video, may the good Lord continue to bless you and your family.
is the Bible is full of contradictions. The biggest problem that we have is we're dealing with a civilization on this planet that is psychologically impaired. Human beings are psychologically impaired. This entire planet. We're living on an insane asylum. Earth is an absolute insane asylum. Mental illness has spread throughout the planet Earth like a complete virus. And when you take a text like the biblical text, knowing that human beings globally are mentally ill, this entire planet is a mental insane asylum. And I'm talking everyone. Every single, all 8 billion, whatever number of people we have now are all mentally ill. And what I mean is there's different levels of mentally ill. We all have trauma that we're not dealing with. We all have internal issues. We all have situations that is shadow work that needs to be done. And so, some people are at higher levels of mental illness than others. Most of us are functional mental illness people. But when you take a look at the biblical text and you start going through this information and it's the way that it's laid out, it becomes a proponent of more divide and conquer tactics. It becomes a proponent of racism. It becomes a proponent of slavery. It becomes a proponent of all these things that are dark and ill, including murder and killing in the name of God, which has been done how many millions of times. So my thing about the biblical text is it actually authored by the creator of the universe, or is it authored by the dark forces of, maybe, if this Satan is real, Satan himself? And the reason why I say that is because all-knowing, all-loving God, omnipotent and omniscient, that is creating not only this universe, probably most likely multiple universes, because a creator never stops creating, especially with infinite power, is now at some point going to author a text that is going to allow human beings to misinterpret it and take it in his name and begin to slay people, torture people, and enslave people worldwide, to claim that you're chosen ones, to set up a state of chosen people, and then to even claim that you have chosen land, and to torture and kill even more people, women and children, in modern times, still going on to this very day. To me, that doesn't seem like a very intelligent being, especially a being that knows the beginning and the end. So if you know the beginning and the end, you have a certain level of foreknowledge. You have advanced knowledge that goes beyond. You know what's the ending before the end even occurs. So you set up everything for success. Why? Because a genius solves problems before they happen. And I'm going to drop the mic on that.
With some of that too, I think came back on.
Yeah. I gotta get to this meeting.
Yeah, there's old stuff that it's hard to comprehend, but the thing that continued to change my life was Jesus, and the core of it was love conquers all things.
I can't miss this.
So yeah. Keep going.
All right, brother.
We can do a follow up.
I really appreciate it, Billy. Thanks so much for interacting.
Come on, man. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. You're making money. Come on. I mean, come on, man. Come on.